Hello and welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber, and my good mate, Noel Tom. For the days when you can't ride your bike, there's always the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast. Welcome back, chaps. Episode 10 of Season 5. Whoever thought we'd still be doing this 5 years later. So I've been really looking forward to recording this one, to catching up with our new best friends, Stu and Ian from Trials Day. trialsday.com. I, along with a few mates, including Will Linson and Paul Landy, who appear on this podcast, had an amazing weekend in the Peak District a good few weeks ago now. Day one was trail riding in the amazing Peak District, and we were very lucky with the weather. We stayed at Hartington Hall YHA, which is a fantastic place to stay in the Peak District. And day two, we spent at Trials Day, which is a trials school very near to Leek. It was astonishing. We had it wasn't even a full day. We were there for about 4 hours, and it was amazing. Trials Day have a fantastic methodology for teaching you how to ride a trials bike, which is why I was really keen to get the guys on here and to talk about it and explain it to you and to get you guys down there to enjoy it as much as we did. Everything you learn is very much applicable to trail and adventure riding. It's highly recommended. Just to be clear, we all paid to be there. This isn't sponsored at all. Genuinely think it will revolutionise the way you ride your bike, and it was absolutely brilliant. So have a listen, get yourself booked in. They're open all year round, and tell them we sent you. Right, let's get on with it. I think we were all absolutely buzzing after the 4 hours or so that we spent there. I think the overriding thing for me was I could not believe, if you told me what we were going to do at the end of the day before we started, I'd have probably just got on my Honda and ridden home.
I feel like I've never learned more of anything in such a short period.
I work as a corporate trainer, so I kind of understand a little bit about how people learn. And I just thought your methodology of teaching was exceptional. And I think we all felt the same thing, really.
Our mission, our product, trialsday.com, we sell nothing but knowledge. We don't sell hoodies. We don't sell bikes. We don't get you to come book into our workshop. All we want to do is build better riders, be that trials riders, trail riders, enduro riders, adventure riders. It's proven over many years and many great riders, the best off-road riders always have a trials background. Let's bounce some names out there that have got a trials background. There's Graham Jarvis, Billy Bolt, David Knight. They just go on and on and on. Paul Tarras is a legend in adventure bike riding now, isn't he? Because he throws that Tenere 700 round like a rag doll.
Hang on a minute, that's the Tenere. It's really easy to ride like that. Everybody can do that.
You mentioned the Trials Day method, Clive, and this is where I'm going to embarrass Stu, because his particular genius is that he deconstructed trials riding into a series of techniques and a syllabus you can teach. So like you, I do training stuff at work. I'm a martial arts instructor. I learned Stu's system for teaching trials riding, and that's what's so effective, because Stu's been developing this for probably about 15 years now. You've been developing your system for teaching trials. There's a tried and tested way of understanding how you ride a trials bike, then explaining it and getting people to practice it. So I think that's the big difference. It's a system of knowledge that you can learn and then apply.
What we've done is create a syllabus very much like a martial arts background. Myself, I'm Taekwondo. Ian, you're about 5 different ones that you're incredibly good at. And what we've done is deconstruct it like Lego or Meccano, and we learn one key fundamental foundation block at a time. The riders that come like yourselves, you're like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? But later down the line, that makes a lot more sense as to why. So something that may seem mundane on the flat is absolutely key on the hillsides. It's the only shape that works. It's the only thing that works. And it works on a small, a 120 kilogram, enduro bike, or indeed, how heavy are your big bikes on, in the real world?
You just described that scene from the Karate Kid, right? You missed a Miyagi bit. Really wax on and wax off in at the bottom of the hill.
I don't know whether to take that as a compliment or a criticism.
Today, we're absolutely delighted to welcome Stu Day and Ian Golton from Trials Day. We recently spent about 4 hours at Trials Day near Leek in the Peak District. Had an astonishingly good day. We'll talk about it more as we go through, but at the end of the day, I was really keen to get Stu and Ian on talking about their training methodology because it's exceptional. The skills and the knowledge you leave with at the end of the day were above and beyond anything I thought I'd ever be able to do on a trials bike, ever, let alone in 4 hours. It was remarkable. Stu, do you want to introduce yourself first?
I'm Stu Day, farmer born and bred, country boy. Always messed around on bikes, simple as that. Got obsessed and hooked with trials riding. It became a very obsessive thing for me. After years and years of martial arts, all I wanted to do was compete. There's probably 2-3 martial arts events per year. There's 2 or 3 events on every single weekend on trials that you can pick and choose from in your district of where you live. I absolutely got obsessed with learning and improving myself in the 90s, and there was no trial schools. There was nothing. All you had was a Duke a video recorder, and you'd buy the World Championship review. You'd look at what your heroes are doing, and you'd find a spot on that video, rewind the VHS to, I can't do that. What are they doing? What are they doing with the clutch? What they're doing with the throttle? What they're doing with the body shape? I become totally obsessed with the methodology. Farmers don't say that word very often. Of what to do to improve, and I did, and I implemented it. I then went and rode trials. I incredibly excelled at warp speed from this way I learned, and I went from clubman to intermediate to expert to winning centre championships in such a short time. I then switched to enduro. I became British clubman enduro in 2005. I won that championship. Along that, I become British expert number 5 in the horse, and then along comes life and all that lot. Done a few things along the way. Ridden abroad. The only person in the world to ride a trials bike around the wall of death. Probably the only person in the world stupid enough to even think that was a good idea.
And Ian, you instructed us on the day that we were there. Do you want to introduce yourself too?
I've been riding off-road for quite a while. I mean, I started going trail riding with mates, as lots of people tend to do. I was an enduro rider, average clubman enduro rider, nothing special. For my 50th birthday, thought I'd treat myself to messing about on a trials bike. Found Stu on the internet, came along, did the sort of day that you guys did, and thought, well, that was fun. So a few months later, I had a spare weekend, thought, I'll go and do another day there. Went back and thought that was really fun. So bought a bike, bought a 2007 Gas 250, which was a cracking little bike to start on. And I kind of went from there. And I mean, I used to do a lot of filming and photography of off-road events. So I started doing some filming photography for Stu, just helping out, picking people up, starting the bikes for them. As I learned Stu's system and I got better myself, the way in which I learned from Stu accelerated my development really quickly, completely transformed my off-road riding full stop. I started to assist, and now I'm one of a small group of Stu's mates who help out with the schools, apply the trials day methods to people, as you found out.
Tell us a little bit about the actual courses, because we signed up for a short day, I think you call it. There's a beginner, a foundation, an intermediate, and advanced, and you also do corporate events, but also because of the there was only 3 of us on our day, but presumably when you see people, you can kind of tailor it to the general standards, I guess.
The key thing, as you said, is tailoring it to the people that are there. Depending on the size of the group, we'll have 1 group or 2 group or 3 groups, even 4 groups sometimes, with different instructors based on level of experience, level of ability. We do a very similar first session every time with everyone together, just to gauge where people are at, to introduce some of the basics of the ways to ride the bike, and then we'll tailor the day after that. The day that you guys did, I mean, it's more of a 2/3 day than a half day, really. We actually covered a lot of ground because you guys can obviously ride, and you took to it really well. So we pushed on and did a lot. We covered a lot in that day, probably as much as a whole day with some other groups that wouldn't have picked it up as quickly. So we'll always tailor it as we go. We'll try and get a sense of people before they arrive. Are they completely new? Do we have any people who've never ridden a motorcycle before? Because we get groups who have never ridden any sort of bike before. So we can work with everyone from a complete non-rider through to, students, expert tuition for championship entrants and people at that level. So we can always cater the ability based on what we need. And as you saw, we had a small group with you, but what we can do is split the group into hard and easy routes, or however it needs to be to keep people interested and challenged, but keep them safe and riding within their ability as well.
What kind of progress do people make that have never ridden a motorbike before?
The beginner program is literally people, I have never been on a motorcycle in my life. I'd like to learn off-road rather than going to a car park in Milton Keynes and dodging cones. And this is from age 12 up to 73, but he had ridden a bike once in the war, I'm sure. The beginner day is, this is a clutch, this is a throttle, these are the brakes, this is what you've got to do. I've only ever failed once in 12 plus years, and we did have an Italian lady rock up on a beginner's day who had never even ridden a bicycle. And at that point I went, no, this is not for you. You do need to be able to ride a bicycle at least. And that is beginner day. And we have great success with that, don't we, Ian? Of getting newbies, we call them newbies, because that's what they are. They're new to motorcycling, full stop. Not just trials, they're newbies. And we get them tootling around, and then we get them riding around sat down, then we get them riding around stood up, and then the rate of success is massive. If they want to learn and they listen and do, at the end of the day, the newbies, you won't believe, on their first ever day on a motorcycle, they're riding. You know, you rode up to the top of Bluestones, our big hillside. Who does that on their first ever day on a motorcycle? And that's a seriously big mountainside. And they're buzzing. They're loving it. Hopefully, we're spawning a lot of new motorcyclists into our kingdom that we love, two wheels.
Strikes me that if you're going to learn motorcycling, to do the really slow stuff is always the hardest bit. So if you did the test recently, I think the cones and stuff get closer together. You're doing more kind of slow speed stuff. That's always the hardest thing to do. It's pretty easy to kind of go in a straight line at speed. So it's like probably the best foundation you could get, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, indeed. But your experience that you just mentioned, Clive, about I never thought we'd be riding over that when we got there at the start of the day, to be brutally honest, that's a very common thing we hear. And because we build the day incrementally, we get people who come back and say, well, if you'd shown me that at the start of the day, I'd have gone home. Because it builds and people acquire skills and abilities. They don't just trundle around the farm and hope for the best. They actually learn some techniques to ride, and then we can gradually extend them and get people doing stuff that they never would have thought would be possible on their first day on a trials bike.
To me, that was the really interesting thing, because when you said, right, you're going to ride over that tyre now, and if you want to do the next one, you can have a go. And then the other thing was, well, we ended up riding up. It was just like a mud wall. It was fucking vertical. There's no doubt about it. And I didn't think twice about doing either of those things. I didn't think this is stupid and a bit dangerous. It's just like, okay, then nobody died, right?
Part of it, if you stopped me, sat me down and said, right, we're now going to go over this obstacle and you're going to do it, and this is how you're going to do it, I probably would have thought too much about it. But just following you, Ian, and sort of watching what you're doing and keeping in mind the stuff that I'd learned any of the day, I didn't think about it. I just sort of did it. When the stuff got harder and harder, that was a real treat.
A lot of our customers that come, they fall into that trap of overthinking, and they're the ones that are the hardest to teach for myself and Ian. This inner wall of no. Whereas where we teach the program, we'd say trust the process, trust the body shape, trust what you've just learned about the throttle, trust what you've just learned about the clutch. Go with the method. Everything you know, everything is from the past before today is actually counterintuitive what you're doing now, but go with it. And them are the ones that excel the best. They're the ones that go in with a clean canvas and just go, okay, I'm trusting you, I'm trusting the method, and they win.
It's lucky for you, we just didn't have any independent thought, so
Ironically, if you get somebody who's ridden on the road and just the road or on the track for 30 years, they find it really hard to start off with because their habits, as Stu says, are completely alien to what we're trying to do. And it's what we're asking to do is the opposite of what they're used to doing. There's a friend of mine who came who'd never ridden a motorbike before, but done a lot of downhill mountain biking. And he took it really quickly because once he got the hang of the right hand being the throttle and the left hand being the clutch, he was away because the body positioning, the movement is more like mountain biking than it is like being on a racetrack. So sometimes your background can either help or hinder. Now, because you guys ride adventure bikes, you'll be used to a little bit of standing on the foot pegs, the bike moving about a little bit, slow speed control. That's really, really handy. But if you're only ever used to doing 130 down Craner curves, it seems so strange to start off with. So the first half hour is a cognitive battle where your brain is telling you to do one thing and we're shouting you to do the opposite. People get there in the end. It's very, very rare that people don't manage it, but eventually it kind of settles in and people's conscious thoughts conquer their habits and they start to understand that it works the way that we're telling them to do it.
To me, one of the things that helped with the riding the most was when you said you ride mountain bikes, this will be more like your mountain bike than it is like your 701. And that immediately then clicked because the wheelbase is a lot shorter than my big bike. The power is a lot less. The weight is a lot less. If you put your wheel in the wrong place, you just sort of move it. Whereas you can't do that on the 701. I've since tried to do pivot turns on my driveway. Was quite a lot harder.
One of the things that we should have shown you actually was where we have the HQ, we have those big rock steps, we have all the different training facilities for doing rock step training on some of those big rock ups and downs. I've seen Stu do that on a 250 EXC. And which is why Stu was winning championships as an enduro rider, because the skills on a trials bike mean you can do it on an enduro bike, an adventure bike, and the stuff that we did on a trials bike, Stu does an enduro bike, and that's quite impressive to watch.
There's that young lad at the end who was in there on a, what was it, a 250 full strength?
Yeah, something.
Yep.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Claudio, yeah.
But again, you could see the same techniques that he was using in the approach in terms of the clutch movement and the body positioning and stuff. It was the same, but bigger.
One of the things that put me off about trials beforehand is that I look at the elite level stuff that you see on Instagram or you see Poltara's doing or Fujigas, and you think, that is basically impossible. That is not something that normal human beings are capable of. But it's not like that. It's just going in a figure of 8 on a hill off camber, which is just so hard, but rewarding when you get right.
You've done 4 hours in a foundation school. You're starting your quest. This is pointless trying to learn how to do pivot turns on a big hillside or one of 4 amazing rock step techniques if you can't balance and turn before it. You had to learn at the beginning. You didn't do a beginner day, you did a foundation day. This is how you stand on the bike. This is how you turn the bike. This is how you balance the bike. This is how you use the throttle. This is understanding throttle timing to find traction. All of that is necessary before you get to the point where you see, like as Ian said, what I can do on the enduro bike, it's just trials technique. What you saw Claudio doing, we taught him. He'd never ridden a motorcycle in his life before he comes to trials day 3 years ago. He's our protege. He's currently winning enduro championships galore through method. You come again, we can do a more advanced foundation day. We can then lead towards an intermediate day. All of this teaches you how to lift the front end on command, off the suspension, the clutch, the throttle, your body, with purpose, with an end result. Not just to do endless wheelies or skids to make you look impressive in front of your mates. This is to have a method of getting over that log, or up that, out of that stream bed, over that rock step. We know how to get to the end result. You can't do it quick, but you can do it with a method. And every rider learns at a different rate. We get some people come in, they may need 5 foundation schools to get that method, or they might need 1. And then it goes on to the advanced stuff. They might need 2 and they've got it. But some may need 4.
With you guys, we covered a lot of ground. So doing wheelie school, we wouldn't normally do that on the day that you did. But again, because you guys took to it really quickly.
Can you just say that again and say especially you, Clive?
Well, there is photographic evidence, remember. Well, because you guys took it really quickly, we covered a lot of ground. We did wheelie school, and you were kind of starting to get there, but the key thing about it was giving you the understanding of how to do it, so then you can then practice it. Because, you know, when I've been out on my EXC, and there's been a log in the middle of the forest, in the past, open the throttle, hurl yourself at it, hope for the best. Now I ride up to it, pop the front wheel over it, pop the back wheel over it, and away we go. And it just makes riding so much easier, let alone anything else. Next time you come, and as we said at the time, we do hope you guys come back, we can build on what we did with the wheelie school, do a refresher, then as Stu says, start introduced to rock steps. And I've seen people use that rock step techniques with GSs. So it still works, whatever your bike is. Obviously, you have to apply it differently on a trials bike, an EXC, a 701, a GS or whatever, but the fundamentals still apply.
One thing that occurred to me is that I'd really love to bring my lads down. They're 15, 21 and 23. But I think it'd be a great place to bring your kids, have a crack with your kids for the day, teach them in a relatively safe environment, because you're permanently on the clutch, the brakes and the throttle right. After a day of doing that, your level of throttle, clutch and brake control is going to be absolutely superb, I would have thought.
We do get a lot of parent and child or grandfather, grandson mother, father. We get a lot of parental groups like that because, as you say, for younger people, it's probably the safest way into bike sport, and also gives them the skills then to do better. Because as lots of young kids want to go fast. That's what they associate motorcycling with. But if they learn how to go slow, and as you say, how to cover the clutch, how to cover the brake, how to use the throttle, then it means that when they do get into junior motocross or whatever it is, they know so much more and can ride so much better. So yes, that sort of family group, we get a lot of that, and it works really well because you can all ride together.
On a sports bike, you get your exhilaration from going really fast and getting around an apex or something with a clean line. But with the trial stuff, that the consequences are much lower. But it's the mastery of skill is harder. Like getting that right is a lot harder to do, but I think more rewarding.
We look in awe at the supermoto riders. Me and Ian are like, what the hell is going on there? We look at the MotoGP riders. We look at the world motocross riders. Such separate skill sets, such different risks, such different mental application, but all learnable and all help towards becoming just a better motorcyclist, full stop. We went on a speedway school. You have never seen two fish more out of water in your life than myself and Ian. Likewise, the speedway guys came to trial school. They were equally out of water. It's a separate skill that you learn, you enjoy. The adrenaline comes in different areas from whatever sport that be, whether you're stepping sideways, whether you're going up a 10-foot vertical rock face, or indeed you're doing 180 mile an hour around a corner that you don't think you can go around. Bikes equal adrenaline.
With everything you taught us that day, was completely applicable to trail riding, I think.
100%.
And I think that's the thing, as I said at the start, about trial skills, the subtlety of control you get, the feel for grip, the feel for the clutch and so on, that feeds forward into any other form of bike sport. I mean, we've had professional racers come and they've really struggled, but it seems to be a sort of weirdly lopsided thing that the fundamental trial skills help with other stuff, but you almost have to, as we've said before, start from scratch with trials to then get the difference and get the idea of it. But that then gives you a better way of riding a bike, which you can then apply in whatever circumstances you want.
Professional races as in track racing? Or
We've had BSB riders come, BSB teams on a corporate day. The star rider, I'm not going to mention names, the star rider, the dummies are out of the pram and the mechanics and the team owner end up way better. And they've had the most hilarious, great time, apart from the superstar who can't get out of how he rides a motorcycle. He is the one doing 2 miles an hour trying to get his knee down and looking a twat. His mechanics have actually listened and been brilliant.
We do get quite a lot of people involved in the motor trade, motorsport, cars and bikes who come along because for a company who wants to go and do a team building day or have a day out, why go to paintballing or something like that? Why not come and do something that's going to be interesting and useful and fun? And we do make it fun as well because, as you'll have realised from the day, we're not reluctant to take the piss out of people because it's all part of the experience and it's all part of the teaching method, because at the end of the day you want to go home having learnt something but having had a good time, but we sneak in some proper knowledge and ability at the same time.
We really did have a good time. One of the things that I got out of it, Ian, was you told us some of the peculiarities of trials bike gearing and trials bike clutches and things like that.
Trials bikes are quite different to other forms of motorcycling, and just simply with the gearbox, as you say, first, second, and third are very, very close together. They're your trials gears. You'll have spent most of the day that you were there in first gear because that's your technical trials applying gear. Third, fourth, fifth, as you say, they're much higher ratios. There's a huge jump to them because that's how you then get from section to section, or if you do a road trial, get on the road. But just that little difference in where the ratios are. It's the only sort of bike where you really get that disparity in the ratios. And as we said, neutral, where you'd expect to be between first and second, but really, really difficult to find because you don't want an accidental neutral when you're halfway up a waterfall. It's making sure people understand some of the differences between a trials bike when we start going to get their heads around just how different this is going to be.
When you explained it's really difficult to get your trials bike into neutral, because I've always assumed there's something wrong with my gearbox on my trials bike. They're designed that way, right?
The modern day trials bike is something that's actually quite incredible. These bikes are a bespoke piece of equipment to be as light as possible, although there is actually a weight limit to, you can't just rock out with a 40 kilogram bike and suddenly beat the world. There is a 65 kilogram weight limit. All of the bikes are trying to be as competitive, as low a center of gravity, as maneuverable, the best clutch, suspension, braking as possible but to be within the legal parameters of a trials bike. Now, that wheelbase is the same now as it was back in the 80s, and they use the same profile of tyres. Yes, the compounds changed, but they're the same profile of tyres as they were back in even the 70s. But the modern trials bike, even a bike that is now 5 or 6 years old, myself and Ian have got new bikes, every year we are astounded how they manage to still, every year on year, create something that is so significantly better than the year before. They do. And it's incredible. It's incredible. I remember being, sorry, I'm showing the age here. Back in the day, 1997, I had a Gas JTX 250, and I was blown away how good this bike was. I actually had one turn up on the school that was like in a time capsule. It was as brand new condition. And this was a couple of years ago. Do you remember it, Ian? And I jumped on it, and I was so excited to ride the bike I used to have and worship. And I jumped on it. I spent 5 minutes on it, and I passed it back to him. And I was the most disappointed I've ever been in my entire life. It was a total dinosaur crock of cack. But that's the modern machinery. Like every sport, it evolves all the time. It evolves.
Will and Paul have yet to buy trials bikes, and they're both going to. What sort of bike should a beginner be looking at?
You're not beginners because you can ride motorcycles, so you don't need a 125 or a 200. The bikes we put you on were 250s, if I'm right, Ian. A 250 is the brilliant all-rounder. If you're getting into trials, you should have a 250 two-stroke. There's many different manufacturers, and it comes down to preference. We have our preferences. We're an all-gas school. We are not sponsored by Gas. We do this because, quite simply, they are the most rider-friendly, easiest to maintain, best handling bike for what we are doing about teaching people how to ride. They do the job perfectly. Before that, we were using beaters. They did the job at the time. I don't personally think they're on the same level as Gas now. There is other manufacturers. There's Sherco. They're okay. They're not as strong, in my opinion. The Scorpa, yet again, good bike. Not as strong. They need more maintenance. The in-bike at the minute is the Vertigo, which is an incredibly good bike. However, it is an incredibly technical bike. It is fuel injection on a two-stroke. Mud and electrics, as we know, they're not friends. I'm still old school. I like a good old-fashioned carburetor because I can take it off, I can blow an airline through it, I can clean it, and it will work. A 250 two-stroke that's been well-maintained, great bike. That's where you start. Then you can move on. The 280s, the 290s, they're more of an expert bike. They're very highly tuned. Even though it's 30 cc's difference, the difference is phenomenal. But the exhaust porting, how the compression is, it is a night and day difference machine. I personally think they're far too fiery for any beginner. Why do people buy them secondhand? Because they're cheap, because there's a limited market for them. The great all-rounder is the 300, and that's the highest a trials bike goes. A 300 two-stroke is as big as they make. And we get people coming up and they giggle. What's the biggest bike you've got? The 300. Oh, I've got a Fireblade. And instantly, me and Ian go, twat. But the 300, myself and Ian, we've had 250s, we've had 300s. The 300 is the most tunable of all. You can make the 300 a fire-breathing dragon or the biggest, torquiest, soft pussycat there is there. You can put slow-action throttle, flywheel weights, you can put low compression heads. They're the daddy of the bikes, really, the 300.
Well, I've put a link to it, a 300 Beta Evo in the chat that's up near Paul. He's going to go and buy it for me and bring it down to me next week.
Now, if you find it's too fiery, we can calm that down.
When you say calm it down, you mentioned the throttle itself rather than the jets or anything. Don't touch the
carburetor. Do not touch the carburetor. Do not touch the carburetor.
So it's all mechanical.
It's mechanical. There is fast action throttles and slow action throttles. The fast action throttles are white. The slow action throttles are black. We tend to run the slow action. You've still got the same amount of power. It's only how far you twist the wrist.
So is that like a cam on throttle or something?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, correct.
You also mentioned a low compression head as well. And what's the third one?
Flywheel weight.
We do get quite a lot of people who turn up on their own bike, relatively new to the sport, and they've got it set up completely inappropriately. And this is where somebody says to me, I can't seem to do this. And beckon Stu over, because Stu is the bike setup expert. He'll jump on the bike and ride it for about 90 seconds and say, right, handlebars are in the wrong place, you need a slow acting throttle, and you'll diagnose what's wrong with the bike. Because, as Stu says, the bikes are very tunable. And if you jump on something that's not set up right for you, particularly as a beginner, it will feel terrible. To start off with, you need a bike which is rideable, which is why if you're an absolute beginner, 125 is good, as Stu mentioned. But for guys that can ride and have got the experience, 250 is a standard bike. It's about how the bike is suited to your build, your physique, because we've had people who are, we had a guy who was 6'8", didn't we, one time? We've had people who are, 5'2". So it's about making sure the bike suits you, but particularly the engine and the throttle. And there's ways to make the bike help you ride the bike better by making it more tailored to your ability and your what you're trying to do in it.
If I bring a bike to you, or anyone brings a bike to you, would you go out on that bike after doing some of that tuning?
If I'm asked to have my opinion on a bike, we don't charge anything for this. This is part of the day. I'll jump on it. There's so many people have the front brake or rear brake set in the wrong place. The biggest one is where they set the clutch. The clutch is the most important thing. The clutch sets you up from gravity drive to motor drive. It feeds from one to the other. It is the critical point if you're going into wheelers and rock step training. All of that lift is off the clutch. If that bike's at the wrong place, there's no way you can be in time with the bike. That's an easy fix in most cases. But it's the most fundamental things. There is a nice setup, a smooth geometry, from whether it's rider height or whatever, that works. And yeah, I mean, luckily I've been in the sport over 30 odd years. If I haven't figured this out by now, I should not worth my salt. But we tend to set the bikes up, give them 5 minutes on the bike, and what do you think of that? And they're like, oh yeah, that's way better. It's way more friendly. But there's no way a person who has nothing to do with trials, has bought a bike, knows what's right or wrong. And ultimately that's what Trials Day is about, learning what is right from wrong. And myself and Ian, whether that's bike setup, body positioning, or learning new techniques, or even being told, pack that in, that's 100% the wrong thing to do. And you think it's right because you've seen something on YouTube, but it's wrong. And we'll explain why it is.
It's interesting, actually, because I came back, Ian recommended I put a slow action throttle on it, and I just ordered one and realised I'd already got a slow action throttle on it anyway. So if anybody wants to buy a slow action throttle, I've got a spare one. I'd never noticed it. I was pottering around, playing around on my I've got a 300 beta. Clutch felt fine. I came home and I spent an hour getting it set up just like the gas that I'd just got off, because that's the way it should be, right? But I wouldn't have known unless I'd been on your day.
Just with what you were saying about the age of bikes and the rate at which they got better over the years, as I've been sitting here, I've been scrolling through eBay, as you do.
I knew you were doing that. The pair of you, I saw it. They're definitely looking for bikes now.
Stay away. That's my Evo. Stay away from that Evo.
I'm looking at this one. Anyway, 2014 is the one that's just come up now that in my budget. Would you say there's a particular year that they all got better? Is there a year at which they're suddenly worth having, and before that day they made life hard for you?
Yeah, 100%. The modern trials bike had a big evolution when Gas bought the TXT Pro out, which was 2002. That then evolved the entire trials manufacturing. They then all seemed to get the shit together and perfect it in about 2012. The 2012 bikes onwards, so you're talking the 10-year-old bike, isn't a million miles off being a very competitive bike. The newer you can get, the better it gets, because the suspension improves, things improve all round. Everything you've heard so far is beta. Just be aware, beta brakes are rubbish because they use their own Grameca ones, whereas all the other brands use the same brake. That's for a reason. They're better. Suspension, there is good suspension, there is bad suspension from make to make. So if you can buy a bike that roughly uses the same suspension that everybody else is using, it's for a reason. It's better. Tech forks are pretty much used in the bulk of all the top high-end brands for a reason. It's better. You can, if you buy a bike with an Olin shock or a Riga rear shock, which is the bulk of the manufacturers are now fitting as standard, they're doing it because it's the best at this present time. Betas are currently the cheapest bike on the market for a reason. they don't fit the high-end equipment. And the bulk of the high-end beta riders are actually retrofitting Tech Forks, Rider shocks. So it's false economy sometimes to go, well, I can buy this beta and it's 500 quid cheaper than that Vertigo. It's 500 quid cheaper than that Gas. It's 500 quid cheaper than that Sherco. It's like anything. You pays for what you get.
Well, I'm just searching up flywheel weights on mine because I've already bought it.
You can do some amazing upgrades. You know, you can buy really cool brakes and you can buy really cool suspension. And the beta engines, it's so robust. It's such a strong motor. I'm going to be super honest. For the bulk of the beginners, you probably won't know the difference from a good shock from a bad shock.
They all feel like pogo sticks anyway on a trials bike.
I was going to say the same thing, really. That to start off with, you just need a reliable, sound bike, and one of the major manufacturers. You probably can't go far wrong. As you progress through your trials career, you might then want to adapt and to train. I mean, we used to have betas. I had a brand new beta 1 year, which was really nice. Then I rode the new gas and thought, well, actually, this rides a little bit nicer. And as I'd improved, I was able to appreciate the subtlety of the difference between the two different bikes. So as you progress and as you get a feel for these things, you'll gravitate towards one make or other. But a decent, sound, recent bike will be fine, as long as you then adapt it and make sure there's nothing's going to catch you out. We had one guy who turned up who was a dentist on a 300 Raga replica, and it just pulled him all around the farm because he was, it's like just passing your driving test and jumping in a Ferrari.
I was chatting to podcast alumni Llewellyn Pavey about suspension on adventure bikes, and assuming that the really expensive suspension was basically just for the elite riders. But his opinion was actually that you'll get forgiven more easily for the mistakes that you make on better suspension. Is that going to be true? You know, should you buy a more expensive trials bike as a crapper rider, you won't get in as much trouble.
The reality is, if you go out on an 8-year-old bike or an 8-month-old bike, it's wear and tear. The newer bike is going to damp better. It's going to find grip better. There's going to be less wear and tear and everything. That goes with everything. You want to go on a big adventure ride, you can have a 20-year-old Tenere 600. Yeah, it'll do the job, but you know full well the 2-year-old Tenere 700 is going to do a way better job. It all comes down to budget and what you want from it, really. On the flip of that, and I'm going to play devil's advocate, you can have the most amazing bike. You can have a £12,000 Vertigo Titanium and not have a clue what to do with it. You're still going to be rubbish.
He was looking at you then, Will.
Based on what you said a minute ago about the 300 Raga replica. It was a 300 Raga replica that I'm looking at on eBay at the moment.
However, any trials bike is better than no trials bike. Once you get more into learning, it's progression. You want more, you do better, and you feed the fuel.
And the other thing to remember is that your £12,000 titanium bike will end up upside down in a pile of rocks at some point while you're learning. So it's better not to be overly extravagant in your first purchase, because that's the bike you learn on. So that's the bike you'll fall off the most. Good news is that trials bikes modern bikes are nice and robust, easy to fix, relatively cheap to fix. But, you will get scuffs, you will get damage to it. You will need a new mudguard at some point from where you flipped it trying to do your wheelies. But, all these things are relatively easy to mend. But that's the reality. Your first bike will be the one that you have the most fun mending.
We have yet to do a trials learning skill on your adventure bike, but myself and Ian have spoke about this way before you guys come and went, well, this is something we could offer. And of course the downside of that is I'm going to have to buy a really cool, nice big adventure bike for myself to train on. It's 100% what we're thinking to do as a one-off, maybe through the summer, or we do technical off-road on enduro bikes. Myself with an enduro racing pedigree.
I've just done a lot of trail riding over the years, and I also am a part of a club and we organise events in the north of England. So I've done a lot on an enduro bike. I think the key thing is, one of the things we have done in the past, and we tend to do it in the summer because the ground is a lot harder. If you have a huge bike on very porridge ground, it's not the ideal conditions and it knackers the ground. But one of the things we have done sometimes is started on the trials bikes and then moved to the bigger bikes, because obviously when you're learning you want something easy. When you're falling off, you don't want to be wrecking your brand new KTM, your brand new GS or something falling off. So you learn your basic skills on the trials bike and then you can move and adapt. If we tried to do wheelie school like we did when you guys came in September on your adventure bikes, it would have been carnage. Having learned the basics and practiced the basics, and next time we come back, we'll do more of that. You can then start to experiment with your adventure bike. So it's a gradual step up, not throwing it at the deep end on something which costs 17,000 quid.
The feedback you get from a trials bike, which is 65 kilograms, you get everything back from it, and you understand what is happening at every point, all the mistakes that you're making. You get direct feedback from the bike, which you don't necessarily get even on the 701s, which is sort of medium-sized bikes. But you absolutely don't. Well, you do, but the feedback is so dampened by the rest of the weight and all the electronics and everything that it's harder to understand what's happening. But if you understand it on the 65 kilogram, you will understand it on the big one.
Yeah, as well as that, I mean, I've ridden 950s and stuff like that when I've been organising events aimed at bigger bikes, and I rode somebody's 950 through a forest section because they'd knackered themselves out picking it up. And the idea of standing on the foot pegs, steering it through the feet, just letting the bike sway from side to side through a twisty wooded section, it's so much less energy. And I was quite impressed, actually, with how the bikes rode. I mean, obviously, you can feel the mass there if you're not careful. And if they do start to go, they go, and you have to look a long way ahead. But the same techniques of how you steer the bike, how you balance the bike, how you use the clutch in it, that applied on the 950 I was riding just as much as it did on my 450 EXC or as it does on my 250 gas guys.
And the reality is, on your Super Tenere 1200, you're not going to go to a giant log, pop the front wheel on it and pop over it. That isn't reality. That's fairy tale. The reality is what you learn from trials on that bigger bike, and that is a big adventure bike, is understanding counterbalance. Stood on the pegs, like Ian said, weight in the correct footrest, but shifting your body weight to counterbalance the mass of that great big Japanese piece of kit, rather than just going tense, cramping up and tipping over like a tree that's been cut off. That is the reality of what you would learn, as well as controls through the what's it. We can't be Mary Poppins. We can't magic an Africa Twin to do what Tony Bow does because, well, let's be fair, he's a god. The reality to the human person is just getting off-road, letting it flow better, rather than just having a panic in a car park that's got a bit of slope on it.
The only thing I was going to mention was that for the benefit of the people at home, it might be worth describing what we did on the day, not in great detail, but the sections as to what we approached, the start, the beginning, and what we did at the end.
We start off most days similar to yours, where it's running through the basics of balancing the bike, understanding how the bike rides, getting your body position right, trying to reprogram your brain from road riding into trials riding. So some of the exercises we did just on the nice flat sort of training slope fields, just to start getting you to understand how different this is to riding the bike. And then we moved on, we started looking at how you use the clutch, how you slip the clutch, which is an absolutely fundamental trial skill, how you work with the suspension just to get you over things, to keep the bike riding nice and smoothly. As the day went on, we did more and more of the trials trail riding, where we're actually applying the things that we've learned. We got on, we did the basics of wheelies with you, learning how to correctly wheelie the bike off the clutch and good body position, uphill and downhill body positions, turning on camber. So the day built incrementally from very, very basic, just getting you riding around in circles to understand how the bikes rode, to at the very end where we had you wheeling up and down that track and going up and down big muddy banks and everything like that. And that's how we do pretty much every day. So we start with the fundamentals and build and build and build and build, and then get you doing more and more interesting, exciting stuff as the day goes on.
Every school is slightly different with the different riders that come. And we'll actually discuss to each other, is this a good time to do throttle timing and learn throttle timing? Is this a good time to do absorbing? Is this a good time to do ruts and ridges? Good time to do more crossing? Shall we introduce wheelie school? Every school is different. With the abilities of the riders that come, we tailor the day to that group. And if it's very clear the group has two different abilities, we actually split the group, and we split as instructors. So Ian will go and do one thing, I'll go and do another with the others. And at the weekends, when it's the Saturday, we might even have as many as 6 different instructors on. So we tailor the day to the clientele that is there then, and we've got such good modules that we can adapt up or down to whatever is needed.
Phase 1 is this lot shit at motorbikes.
Yeah, basically. Or is it going to be a really high-end push hard day?
I'll edit that so he says that about us, don't worry.
Nice.
Tell us a little bit about the farm, Stu. Where do we find you, and how do we book onto a course?
Trialsday.com, we founded back in the 12th of the 12th, 2012. That was not through choice, it's just pure coincidence. It makes for a cool t-shirt though. I set out, having done 2 years of instructing with the Honda Trial School, set out on my own to really be in charge of what I can do. We are based in Leek in Staffordshire. on the A53 in between Leek and Buxton. A nice central location. We've been up and running nearly 11 years now, 11 years next month. So we thoroughly understand what is right and what is wrong. To book on, simply drop me a text. You can inquire through the website as well. Trialsday.com is the name of the business, so it's not hard to find the website. We are on Facebook and on Instagram as @TrialsDay. Drop me a message. We don't put any dates online because we want to be as flexible and as maneuverable as possible. Like you guys, we tailored around you. That's what we try to do as much as possible. We try to do every single Saturday. We try not to do too many Sundays because we like to go out and ride as well on Sundays for ourselves. But if needs must, we can. Midweek day, 1 to 2 days midweek floating. We've got 200 acres, as you will know, of incredibly diverse off-road riding. It's pretty much everything you will come across in our 200 acres. We've got rocky outcrops, we've got woodlands, we've got rivers, we've got all sorts. It's perfect.
We haven't put the prices up since we started. You won't find a better value experience day anywhere. Same
That's
prices
correct.
in 2012.
Not many places can say that. Our thinking with that is we would rather have far more riders come over the cattle grid, learn, enjoy it, say that's incredible value for money, tell their mates, and keep coming back, rather than being a bit too greedy, not getting the repeat customer.
Thoroughly recommended. We had a weekend away, basically. We stayed at a youth hostel not far from where you are. We went trail riding in the Peak District on Saturday, and then we rocked up at yours on Sunday morning. We should probably have done it in the other way round, so we'd have had a better trail riding experience the following day.
And not been so exhausted.
A lot of people do make a weekend of it because it's a beautiful part of the world, obviously. It's just underneath the Roaches and the bottom side of the Peak District. If you need somewhere to stay, there's a holiday cottage on site, which is available for rent. But also we know loads of places around Leek and around the Peak District. If you're looking for recommendations for accommodation, places to eat, places to drink, we can always help people to make a weekend of it. And it's a great place to bring your family, bring your partner, you do some riding, they go off walking. And then, as you say, on the Sunday, you're off around the peaks doing whatever you want.
Also, through the summer, we do get quite a lot of adventure rider groups come, and we work with the TRF as well. We're not averse to, if you come with your tent and there's a few of you with a little campfire, we're happy to accommodate a little bit of a mini festival where you come and learn, camp over, learn the trials bikes, go and trail ride. You've got your base set up. You can use the HQ for your toilet facilities or your cooking. We're very open to that as well.
That sounds like our TAMP podcast meetup sorted out that everybody's been asking for the last 3 years.
I'm in.
See you there.
One of the most satisfying things is the numbers of people that come and think, that was a lot of fun. I'm going to buy a bike, and then come back with a bike, and then come back with the mates. It's getting people into the sport because it's such a brilliant sport. And I think that's a lot of why we do it, really, because it's just so rewarding to see people learning something new, finding a new world of exploring how you ride a bike and how you ride different sorts of bikes and really getting into it. So it's just a great experience for us to see that happening.
Biking just brings people together that probably not meet in any other walk of life. It brings dentists or demolition merchants together because they've got a common interest and goal. It's a great leveler and it's a lot of fun. And I think if everybody rode a bike, we'd actually find world peace.
Yeah, honestly, it seems mental that everybody doesn't do trials because, like you say,
Yeah.
you don't really need a license because you can ride the thing on private land.
Completely.
They're cheap, and the skill that you get from off the back of it is like the best thing.
And the adrenaline rush. Trust me, when we get
Yes,
and we've taught you how to do all the correct rock step techniques, and you're in front of a big ass thing, Ian. Our hearts are still in the front going. It's a pure drug that is just priceless.
So a massive thanks to Ian and Stu for doing that. It was great to catch up with them and reminisce about our day down at Trials Day, trialsday.com. If you fancy giving it a go, let them know we sent you and also give us a message. I'm really keen to do it again. We might come and join you down there. Right, until next week. See you then. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you really appreciate what we do, you could consider supporting us on Patreon or buy us a coffee. Links are available on our website, which is tampodcast.com, tampodcast.com, where we also have a limited selection of branded stuff. But either way, please keep listening and spreading the word. See you next time.